The comic book industry has been overrun by what we call SJWs. They are activists who seek to change entertainment into propaganda, and they will tolerate no dissent. I'm Ethan Van Sciver. I'm a 28-year veteran of the comic book industry. People call me the world's most charming, disarming, elegant, eloquent, and yet humble man. So Comicsgate is a consumer reaction to SJWs, social justice warriors, who have basically infiltrated and taken over the comic book industry. There seem to be drastic changes made to beloved characters that were created by great people, great creative people decades ago. And they fell into the hands of activists who just decided, well, you know, comics, they seem a little bit sexist. They seem a little bit racist. These people created problems and then announced that they were the solution. They were the answer. They were the fix for all of these problems that they insisted existed, even though comic book fans loved comics. Not only were the comic books becoming unreadable, but the creative people had gone from just being liberals to being woke activists who were abusing the customers. These were the politics of the author that had worked their way into the book. And people started to complain.
I'm sorry to break this to you, but Captain America is a social justice warrior. And if you don't like my politics, don't buy my book. Problem solved.
It wasn't too long before Thor had become a woman. It's like Iron Man became a teenage black girl. Mockingbird, who is Hawkeye's girlfriend, was seen wearing a t-shirt that said, "Ask me about my feminist agenda." Bruce Banner, the Hulk, was replaced by an Asian kid who liked being the Hulk. Robin is bisexual and exploring his sexuality, and that's an event. That's an actual event in comics now. There's always been diversity in comics. There's always been plenty of characters that are people of color. There have been more than enough women, I think. There have been quite a few LGBTQ characters. Everybody can relate to Peter Parker Spider-Man because he's got an incredible amount of responsibilities on his shoulders, and life is not easy. Marvel Comics at some point decided that he wasn't appealing to enough people because of his skin color. People disagree with that. I mean, everyone loves Spider-Man. The fun thing about these stories was they were relatable because they were complicated. They were not perfect people. They were not perfect characters. These new characters that are being created by social justice warriors, characters that, you know, they've dug out of nowhere. I mean, Captain Marvel. This is a flawless character. And the reason why is because they want to present this female superhero who is perfect in every way. And perhaps she's non-binary, she's lesbian. These people are actually afraid to make characters that are believable and relatable because they're afraid they'll be insulting the marginalized group of people that they're supposed to be representing. This is no way to tell stories. This is not how to do comic books. This is not fun. That's one of the things that Comicsgate rose up in defiance of. All of the people who are supposed to be represented by these weird leftists who have wormed their way into the comic book industry, they resent it. They resent it. They don't want to be represented this way. They don't feel like they can be summed up by the color of their skin or their sexual identity or their preference. There's something in here that Captain America represents, that Superman represents, Batman, Spider-Man, Wonder Woman. It's in here. It's not out here. And that is a big problem. That is where we've gone wrong in comics. When I worked at DC Comics, and I worked there for a good 20 years, I noticed a lot of strange things happening. I noticed that DC Comics every now and then, particularly in 2011, said, we're going to make some drastic changes to Superman. This is the way he looks now. He wears jeans. He wears jeans and a t-shirt. His spit curl that was shaped like a little letter S on his forehead, that's gone. Can't do that. And I pushed back a little bit on this because I didn't know why it was happening. I didn't understand that, like, the reason why this was happening was because DC Comics was currently embroiled in a copyright battle with the family of Jerome Siegel, the co-creator of Superman. And I realized that much later. Much to my chagrin, I realized that I was part of hurting the family of a character that I grew to love, that I grew up with Superman. He's my favorite superhero. If woke comics do not sell, and they really don't, mostly people are walking away. If they do not sell, why are these big corporations participating in allowing SJWs to make woke comics? And one of the reasons is it's a very convenient way to virtue signal while robbing the families of these creators. The comic book industry became pretty politically poisoned during the George W. Bush years. I started to notice, people knew I was a Republican. They just knew that. They knew I voted for George W. Bush. When Trump won the election, I didn't realize what that had done to these people's brains. I just didn't know. So I posted a picture of myself wearing a MAGA hat on Twitter. We won. Hooray. The level of hatred that came my way from people who I thought were my friends. They started to scour my social media for evidence that I could have been a white supremacist. They then mobilized amongst themselves as creative people to refuse to collaborate with me. That is when they started writing hit pieces and articles. And I began to understand what cancel culture was. This wasn't just people were mad at you. This was, you have run afoul of a group of activists who were organized and who have tactics that they've utilized quite successfully to destroy the lives of people who have gotten in the way of their agenda. So I was actually warned to stay away from Comicsgate. And I said, I can't, they're right. And I was told that nobody was going to work with me again. And then I was asked by DC Comics to sever my social media, to not use Twitter, not use YouTube anymore. And I said, I can't do that because I have to stand up for myself. I was expendable because continuing to employ me meant that DC Comics would be a continuing target for harassment by these people. We couldn't believe it. We could not believe that this was happening after 20 years. Cancel culture isn't just getting you fired. That's just part of it. It is destroying your name and salting the earth underneath you so that you cannot find a job anywhere else ever again. And if you do, they will be watching you and they will attack whoever it is dares to give you work. Anyone who dares to treat you like a human being will come under attack by social justice warriors. So what do I think is going to happen? I think comics, the mainstream comic book industry is going to continue to limp along for a little while, but it cannot last forever because it doesn't offer anything wonderful anymore. SJWs are not concerned about telling a story. They're concerned about reprogramming the way that you think about social issues. That's entirely why they're doing this. And that's why they cannot tell good stories. They're not interested in that. That's not their goal. Their goal isn't to entertain you, it's to change you. We cannot fix what they are doing, what social justice warriors, what the radical left has done to the culture that was created before us. We have no choice but just to accept that. We cannot pry them loose. But what we can do is create our own new culture. Stan Lee did the same thing in 1961. He was disgusted by the political atmosphere of comics in the 1950s. His wife said, why don't you just do it your way? Just do a comic book your way. That was Fantastic Four #1, 1961. That was the new start of the comic book industry, Marvel Comics. And now we are at that threshold again. We have to create new stuff. We have to. I brought back the character that I created when I was 19. The most enthusiastic I've ever been about comics was when I created Cyberfrog. So he's going to be the first comic book that I bring back, and I'm going to do a whole new story arc with him, a whole new idea. I launched it and it raised $1.1 million. And this drove them absolutely crazy. This put me firmly in their targets now. I am public enemy #1 to them. And I've had many subsequent successes. Cyberfrog 2, which I'm working on right now, these are oversized comics, raised $1.2 million. It's actually increasing. And we made toys. We actually raised enough money to make Cyberfrog toys without Hasbro, without Mattel, without Disney. We did it all by ourselves. The main problem with trying to do indie comics on your own is that you don't have the marketing and promotional arm that Warner Brothers and Disney have. If we just get together and we create comics and crowdfund them. We set them up on Indiegogo or Kickstarter, and then we direct people to those crowdfunded comics using our YouTube channels. It's going to work. I just want people to support independent comics and the Comicsgate movement. I think that is the future, and it's something that we can all do together. It's something that we can build together. I love it. It makes me happy.